Hi everybody, welcome to the second video of Russian. In the last video, we looked at the history of Russian and how it's impacted English and 10 sample words from the language. And so now we can start looking at our specific rules for the language, the vowel and consonant rules. Typically we do all the vowel rules in one video, but for Russian, the vowels are actually very important. They can form the backbone of the entire language. And you'll find later on that the consonants are pretty similar to what you'd expect in English, but the vowels can differ a bit. So for that reason, in this video, we will cover the vowel sounds pertaining to A, E, and I, and then in the next video, we can work on O, U, and some other extra vowel sounds in Russian. Okay, so without further ado, we can start with A. So right now we're going to look at all our sounds in Russian that have to do with the letter A. So usually we have three, right? We have the long A sound, which is pronounced A. Okay, it's the A with a line over it. Then we have the short A, which is just an A with no markings, and that's pronounced A, as in cat. And the final one is the A with two dots, which is pronounced aw. And it's ah. It's pronounced ah. So these are the three sounds, vowel sounds that are related to the letter A. For us, what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at these two, because in Russian, I was doing some research on this, because in the dictionary I didn't recall seeing any words from Russian that had the A sound. I might be wrong, but I didn't remember any. I did a search through Merriam-Webster. I couldn't find any. None without variants anyways. So I did a little research, and turns out in Cyrillic, the language of Russian, the way it's written, there are only like 5 vowel sounds, which we have 5 vowels in English, but we have a combination of like 12 vowel sounds in English. So I'm assuming that this long A sound, which is pronounced A, doesn't really exist in Russian. So we're not going to look at this. And there aren't, as far as I know, there aren't any words from Russian that do have that. And it probably will if it's passed through another language. It might have picked it up then. So in that case, you can probably just spell it with an A. But for now, we're going to ignore this. Right? We're going to ignore it, so I can go ahead and erase it, and we can focus on the other two. Another thing to note is the short A sound. The next one here, it's pronounced A, and also it's not very common in Russian. Of course, lots of words will have that, but it's not too common to have that sound in Russian. Pretty much the only sound that's very, very common in Russian that's pertaining to A is this sound, the ah sound. You're going to see that a lot. So we'll focus on that. If you ever see the ah sound, it's always going to be spelled with an A. An example I can think of right now, let me just check that this is the pronunciation in the dictionary. Safian might be a word from Russian. Yeah, it's a Russian word. Safian is a leather made of goat skins or sheepskins, tanned with sumac, I believe. Yep, sumac, and dyed with bright colors. So here you can see it's the A sound, the short sound, so it's pronounced A, Safian, and you're going to spell it with an A. Very simple and no complicated rules there. So that boils us down to, I just erased it, but the A with 2 dots. Okay, so we're going to look at that, the A with 2 dots. And this is pretty important. The sound is pretty important in Russian. Again, it's very common and it happens in a lot of words. And actually, it's gonna be spelled. It can be spelled multiple ways, like it is in most other languages. There are 2 ways to spell it though, mostly. So let's look at that. The first one, you've probably guessed it already. It's gonna be just an A. And the second one is an O. Okay, so an A or an O. And this has been the case with other languages as well. Let's make this look better. And we've seen that a lot of languages, the A sound can be, the ah sound will be spelled with either an A or an O. How do we know which one? Is it 50-50? Well, typically there's a lot of answers to that question. Usually it will be around 50-50. One spelling doesn't have an advantage over the other. But most of the time, you can rely on your intuition to figure out which one it is. because sometimes the other one won't look right. And you can just know that. It's your intuition, it's your Sprachgefühl. That's a word that all spellers love, and they actually asked this this word, Sprachgefühl, in the finals this year in 2015, um, in the finals of the National Spelling Bee. But I digress. So again, it's going to be either an A or an O. Let's look at some examples. Maybe that'll help clear it up a little bit. Example word is Glasnost. We've already seen this word Glasnost. Here we have the ah sound, and it's spelled with an A. Right here, a Glasnost. And here, I mean, if you this one is tricky because you could replace that with an O, and it would look kind of right. You know, it could be still Glasnost. So that's like a tricky one because both of them look correct, but typically with other words, such as Domra, here's an example, Domra. Let's say we have it's spelled Domra. So here the ah sound is going to be spelled with an O. Okay. If we were to replace that with an A, I'm going to write it in red because it's wrong. Damra. If we think about it, that would probably be pronounced Damra. We could, or yeah, Damra. Our intuition kind of tells us that. So in this case, you would probably stick with the O because it just looks right, and here it would be something else. So again, you rely on your intuition. That does help like almost all the time, and yeah, it's something you can't ignore. So again, we have other words, that are far easier. Like I'm gonna put one up here: cosmonaut. Cosmonaut. Here, the ah is spelled with an O. Cosmonaut. And here, I mean, it has the root cosmo, meaning universe, which is, like a Greek root. So here, even though this is from Russian, we don't have to worry about putting an A there because we know the root. It comes from cosmo. Even if you did have an A there, let's write it, Casmonaut. That looks wrong. It looks like cosmonaut. It would not be pronounced cosmonaut, probably. So again, here's another instance of where you can rely on your intuition to help you figure out which one it is, A or O. Another word I'm thinking of right now that has to do with this, just to provide one more example, is this word tarbagan. Tarbagan. Oh, here's a great example of the short A being spelled simply with an A, as you can see there. But tarbagan, here the ah sound is spelled with an A. If we were to write it with an O, it would be Torbagn, and that would look like it's pronounced Torbagan. It wouldn't give you that sense of being pronounced like Tarbagan. So again, another instance of where your intuition, your Sprachgefühl, can come and help you in this case. The definition of Tarbagan, if you're wondering, is a pale or reddish gregarious bowback. A bowback's a kind of rodent, so that's what that means. And it's another good example of how you can rely on your intuition to figure that out. Remember, Russian words aren't very common. They don't come up very often in spelling bees, so it's rare that you'll ever be faced with this dilemma. But if you do, see if there's any roots that can help you figure it out, like cosmonaut, or any common words, maybe like glasnost. And if not, just plug each one in and see which one looks right, and usually you'll be correct. So that's it for A. Remember, the other two sounds are not very common, the long A sound and the short A sound. So we're done with A, and now we'll move on to all the sounds pertaining to E in the Russian language. So there's usually two sounds that we look at. Our first one is our regular E with no markings. It's pronounced as in egg or bet, and it's the short E sound, and luckily for us, there's only one way to spell it. Very simple, it's just going to be spelled with an E. No other way. Some example words are telega. It's a great word, T-E-L-E-G-A. Telega, or I think it's also pronounced telega. So I think it's telega or telega. Let me just check to make sure. It's a kind of wagon, I know that. So here, let's see. Okay, so there's two pronunciations. We have telega, the stress is on the lega part, telega, or teljega. Okay, so telega or teljega. Either case, the last part of this word has the sound, the short E sound, and it's spelled with simply an E. So not much to discuss there, that's pretty simple. Another great word that I love is promyshlenik. It's a nice Russian word. Promyshlenik. Promyshlenik. It doesn't have to do with the word promise. I think it's like a trader, merchant kind of thing again. So we can double check that just to make sure I'm giving everyone the right definition. Russian trapper, not and fur trader of Siberia and Alaska. Okay, so it doesn't have to do with promise. It's actually gone through a lot of languages, but it ends up in Russian, which in literally it means a trader or industrialist. So that's Promyshlenik, and again the is spelled with simply an e there. So that's the S sound, and now we will go on to something that's a little bit more trickier, and it's got a little bit more going on there, and it's our long E sound. Our long E sound is E with the line over it, pronounced E as in beat or feed, and there are 3 ways to spell this. But don't worry, we'll make it simple. The most common way to spell it, I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. The most common way to say this, or to spell this sound, in Russian, is going to be an I. In the middle of words, even sometimes at the end of words, usually it's going to be an I. The other 2 ways are not as common. Okay, so if you're ever in doubt, you could probably stay safe with using the I. The other ones are not as common, and they are a double E and a Y. And what I thought we'd do is, this is a perfect opportunity to use the dictionary and use that advanced search setting to find the instances where it's either EE or Y. So let's do this. Let's go to the dictionary, because remember, EE is not going to be as common. So if I go here, I go to advanced search, and I want my entry word to have EE in there somewhere. So anywhere, at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, wherever. So I'm going to put my asterisk, EE asterisk, meaning that every word I'm going to search for is going to have that. And I want the word to be from Russian. So we're going to go to etymology includes and type in Russian. Okay, now we're going to do a search and see what comes up. There shouldn't be that many words. I'm guessing there's going to be like 15 or less, probably, words that have EE and are from Russian. So we'll see here, and we're going to do the same thing for Y. This way, if you do this, you can either end up with a list that's so short that it would be best to memorize those words and learn those words, so you never have to worry about if a word has that spelling again or not. Or if it's the intermediate size, you can try to find a pattern. There we go, 11 entries found. I was right on, 15 or less. Actually, some of these words won't even count because they've been in Russian, but they're not really Russian, like beach is from English. So here's one, beetuk, great Russian word, very common Russian word. See, this one has a double E. Beetewk, it's a kind of horse. This one's a variant. We shouldn't worry about variants too much, as long as you know one. But here the variants are pronounced differently, so it's good to know this one, because they might ask Baidarki, and then you would have to give this spelling, because that's the only spelling that corresponds with that pronunciation. So that's another one. Baidarki is kind of boat. This one has variants. Freedomite, kind of sounds like freedom, so you would probably guess that. Glee is a common word. It's another variant. See, there's only keep, we all know that word. Maw, what? Maw seed. Okay, so that's why we don't have to care about that. This is 2 words. And sea catch, last one, Russian. Perfect word. Seecatch. So really only there's 3 words, okay? Beetuk, Baidarki, this one, and the last one, sea catch, and sea catchy, I guess the inflected form of that, the plural of that. So these 3 words, these 3 or 4 words, that's it. If you know these 3, then you're never going to have to worry about this combination right here, because you know all of the words that have that now. So that's out of the picture. So now we can look at Y. Let's see if we find something interesting. So let's clear this. We want the entry word to have a Y, and we want the where'd it go? Etymology to be Russian. Keep in mind, some words that have Y in Russian might not be pronounced E. They might be pronounced I or I. But we're only interested in the ones that are pronounced E and are spelled with a Y. Let's see what we get. I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of them that end in Y because, that's a common ending, sort of like Drosky or Perwitsky. You've got those, that's a very common ending. Lewinsky comes to mind. So these kind of names, words, Russian, they're typically, if they end in itsky or isky, typically they end in a Y, spelling wise. So let's see if that's what we find. 74 entries. And there's going to be less than that actually, because words like this are agro city. They're just sort of combined words, so they don't count. But here, like, this is a great example of what I was saying. Baruxi. See, it ends in that, and it ends in a Y. See, here's a variant. So from what it looks like, let's see. From what it looks like Y is typically going to appear at the ends of words. Clist, that's a good one. That has it in the middle, but that's not the E sound, that's the short I sound. And we'll talk about that later on too in this video. But from what I'm seeing, like here, Perwitsky, if it ends in itsky, it's going to end in a Y usually. Otherwise, not really. That's the schwa, so we don't have to worry about that. Yeah, there's not too many words. So again, if you have the Y for in Russian, here's another one. Droshky, we've talked about this one. See, the E sound at the very end, usually if it's ending the word, it's going to be spelled with a Y. And so that, again, reduces our stress or worry about the Y sound. Because if the E sound appears in the middle of the word, okay, in the middle, and it's not bituk or C-catch, or the other one we saw, then you know it's going to be an I. So this is kind of like a process of elimination to figure out which one of these spellings is most common. We've proved it's the I. These two are pretty rare. There's only 3 words with EE, and the ones with Y, you saw the list wasn't too long. You could always go through that, or you could kind of notice that the Y pops up at the end if it is for the long E sound. Okay, so hopefully that clears that up. And now finally, before we end, we're going to look at the I sound, or all the sounds relating to I. Okay, so there's 2 sounds that can come out of this, the short I and the long I sound. Let's look at short I first. Short I is just an I. It's pronounced I, as in kid. And typically, we just saw an example where it was spelled with a Y. So there are 2 spellings, but again, the most common way to spell this, oh, that's thick. Let's make it a little bit thinner. So the most common way to spell this is, you've probably guessed it, it's just an I. Simple, nothing too complicated. But rarely it will be a Y. And in those cases, I mean, again, you would just have to know the word and you would just have to know it. I don't think there's any like hard and fast rule as to differentiate between these. Usually it will be an I. Words that, there are some words that end in SKI. Remember I just said like itsky, drosky, usually it'll be a Y, sometimes it can be an I, so really that's where it gets a little tricky. But then just remember, your chance of getting a Russian word isn't that high in the first place, so hopefully you won't run across that, and hopefully you do know the word. You've probably seen it before. So again, Y is pretty rare. There is one exception word I want to talk about, which is this word, Siberski. It's pronounced Sibirsky. Sibirsky, and there is a short I sound right here, and it's spelled with an E. Whoa, where did that come from? Why is it not pronounced Sibirsky? Well, it's pronounced Sibirsky, but the definition has to do with something with Siberia. So from that, you can probably figure out, you should get a clue that that's going to be spelled Siber. But that's an exception word. Most other words are going to use I for the I sound, such as Gospodin, Gospodin, or Sputnik even. It's a common word. So these endings, din, nik, they all use the I. They all have the I sound and they're spelled with an I. So again, most of the time it's going to be spelled with an I, rarely a Y. We just saw an example with one. So again, the sound isn't very common in Russian either. So shouldn't be too worried about that. And there's not much I can say there for choosing if it's an I or Y. Most of the time it will be an I. So do go with that if you're not sure. Again, your intuition can help with that as well. It does most of the time. Finally, the last one we're going to cover, is our long I sound, I with a line over it. It's pronounced I, as in bite or kite. And like most words, most foreign languages, usually it's going to be spelled with an AI. Very typical spelling. There aren't too many words in Russian that have this sound or this spelling, but usually it will be an AI, such as the word taiga, Taiga, like the tundra, taiga, very simple right there, AI right there. Or maybe you've heard of the instrument balalaika, Balalaika, balalaika. Again, the I sound is spelled with an AI. Another great example is the word vaivode, Vaivode. Now, this word is interesting because it's not only from Russian. I think it originated with Russian and then it went through like Italian and other languages, but it still retained that AI, because that's typical of other languages as well, like Italian. So most languages for the I sound, other than English, they use AI. I know Spanish uses AY, but a lot of them use AI for the I sound. So Russian is not different there. If you're wondering, Vaivode is a military commander, so that's that. Again, this one should not be too complicated. And so now we have covered A, E, and I, the vowel sounds for A, E, and I in Russian. And in the next video, we'll finish up vowels by looking at O, U, and some other special vowel sounds. Thank you. I hope to see you then. Bye.